Hello and welcome to another Witcher 3 REDkit tutorial. I'm Matthias from the Witcher 3 REDkit team, and today I will try to show you how to create worlds or edit existing ones, mainly involving creating and shaping terrains using different brush tools and also applying some materials to it. Also, we will try to take a look how to use the overall scene structure that is basically built upon many layers or layer groups that will basically hold any content that's inside of your world. Also apply some vegetation, so trees or brushes. Also applying some weather and environment to make your world look a little bit better. Add some water areas so you can, use lakes and rivers in your world as well. And at the end, we will try to take a look at how to apply null meshes to the very surface of your terrain or some static meshes so that later on, maybe NPCs can navigate a little bit better on your world. So without any further ado, let's jump straight in. So I just launched REDkit from the Steam storefront, and you can see this is the main window here. And first things first, let's just do some of the things that I usually do when I freshly launch the editor. One of the things that you will notice on the right side, this panel here that has multiple tabs in here, you can see that there are the scene that will hold the scene structure for us once we have opened up a world or created one. Also, we will have different tools at our disposal, and also there will be tools that are mainly for debugging reasons or something that can be used on a major complexity. And also you can use these tools on the right side for the actual open world. So you can see that the terrain edit tools and the vegetation edit tools will mainly apply for the currently open world. But these ones on the toolbar can be used in any other context, and you can also launch them right away without having a world opened, like the localized strings editor. But for these ones, you need to have some sort of world open first. As you can see here at this black square here is actually our main viewport, which will, preview the contents of the world, and you can move around and navigate and select items inside of it. But since we haven't got any worlds opened, now we just see the black void. So a couple of important things. You will see that this world and properties tab will actually hold some of the main properties. So in the world tab, you will see some of the properties that only reside to your world, and the properties tab that will be showing you the actual properties of the currently selected item. Let it be a building or some entity or an NPC, anything really. It will show the current context of it. So the first thing that I like to do is that you can, drag these tabs to another docking location, which is pretty neat because you can actually customize it a bit. So what I like to use is to actually drag the properties down here so that each time you select something, an item or anything, you can see the properties right away. You don't have to, switch the tabs over and over again, which will prove really useful. Also, you can resize them to your liking. But, if you accidentally mess up and you want to go back to the default state of these tabs, you can do it in the View menu panel and then just select All to Tab. That will just put all the tabs back in if you cannot do it by hand. But this time I will stick to this old method of mine to just put the properties on the bottom. Another very important thing that you should do while using some of the tools that we will use later on is to actually apply some debug filters, because by default, not all of them will be visible to you. So you could end up, adding some areas or triggers or spawn points to your world and end up not actually seeing them, just a gizmo. And the reason for that is that the debug filters are not enabled for them. So I'm just going to make sure that we will all be on the same page. So open the view and settings, and this dialog will show up to you, which is essentially just a huge collection of different options at your proposal. And also they are separated to the editor options and game options. The reason for that is that you can, apply different filters to test out your gameplay, and you can apply different filters when you're in edit mode, so in the editor mode. But this time we will only make sure that we see the right things in the editor. So hop on to editor options and debug for the debug filters. So you can see there are a bunch of checkboxes here. You can go rogue and select some of these options like select all, that will highlight all of the debug filters for you. But I would not advise that. In most of the cases, just making things a little bit convoluted, like a lot of things will show up and it will be confusing, most likely. So you can, if you select everything or just some things by accident, you can reset them to default, because by default we have these options already, or just select none, so you can get rid of everything permanently. So for us, which will be important, is the areas one. So we can work with areas in our scenes. And also one of the things that I like to use is the waypoints debug filter, which will actually lend us a hand to actually see some of the spawn points or any waypoints that we can use. And I think that should be it for now. You can also, check in the non-mesh options, so you can actually see the generated non-mesh on your terrain or your static meshes. So I'm just going to make sure that I check these as well. Once you're done, you can actually choose the save and close option. And I think we can finally get started. So for this tutorial, let's just create a brand new world for us. For that, you can either check out the file new world option, or just select this quickly accessible toolbar option, this page with a plus icon. If you click on it, it will highlight the dialog and start the create world process. So first of all, we need to add a new world name. For us, it can be anything that you like. I will name it something like World Edit Tutorial. Some really large name, but it should suffice for now. So press OK once you have your name. So after a few seconds, you will see that the dialog has just disappeared, and already we have something in the scene structure. And also the main viewport is not entirely black anymore. In fact, we have some sort of cursor, and if I press the right mouse button, I can actually rotate my camera. So there's a camera instance in here, and we have some sort of default lightning shown in our world. But right now, of course, we don't have any content in it, and we don't have any terrain yet. So let's start by actually creating some terrain for our world. For that, as you might remember, at the right side, we have all of our tools that can be used for our currently open world. So for now, we need terrain. So let's open the terrain edit tools. So this dialog will show up, and you will see that right at the beginning, we have this tab called setup, where we can actually, set all sorts of settings, like the number of tiles that we want to create for our world and the resolution for them. Also, you will have some default settings that would suffice most of the time, like how long should be in meters, how long should be the edge of your terrain, and like what is the minimum and maximum elevation that you can go. So let's say that you have most of the terrain in the level of 0 meters, but you will have some caves or some rivers and lakes that have a much deeper depth onto them. So you can use this minimum elevation to actually, allow the terrain to be shaped under like 77 meters. But for now, I think that's pretty good. And of course, the maximum elevation goes for the other direction. So if you want to have higher mountains, you can, just add some extra to the maximum elevation. For now, I don't want to have only one tile, but I would like to use a little bit bigger. So let's go with 64, so 8 times 8 tiles of resolution. And we will have a 124 clip window with this kind of tile resolution. But of course, you can use any other things that you want. For now, I'm just gonna leave it as is. And of course, you can also import an already existing terrain using this option. And in here, you will see an import-export option. You can actually import your custom-made height maps and color maps into the engine. So let's say that you have used another external tool and you want to import the height map of it and use it as terrain inside of here, then you can do this in this import-export tab, and you will see that we can select all tiles, select whether we just want to use a height map or color map or both. And yeah, then you can actually import the tiles in using this dialog. But I won't get much into this now because I want to keep this a little bit shorter. So this time, let's just use the dedicated tools to actually generate the terrain for ourselves with this tool. So having all of these options applied, let's say that we are happy with this and click on Apply Setup to actually begin the generation process. This can take a few seconds based upon how large your terrain tile is. So if you chosen something much bigger, then probably it will take a little bit longer. So right now, it took only a few seconds to actually generate something. You will see at the right that there are new folders appearing like terrain tiles and terrain tile stem. And also, there's not much going on yet on the main viewport. The reason for that is that we haven't applied any material to the terrains. So the tiles are there, but they are pretty much invisible because they don't have any material. So for that, just check out this material tab and also hop over on the asset browser. If you don't have it opened, you can open it on the main toolbar using this 3 squared icon. So if you click on it, it will show up. This left navigation panel or the navigation view can be toggled by using this arrow button here. So if by default you only see the contents of the currently selected folder, but you also want to use the navigation view, just click on this button and everything will be shown as a generic file explorer. So in here you can see all of the folders and all of the assets that are basically contained in your depot or in your workspace. And what we want to actually search for is the material itself. So let's go with something terrain material. So you can search for it actually if you are not familiar with where is it supposed to be exactly. You can just search for it. So when you search the first time, it will take a few seconds to actually index everything and initialize, but the second time it should be a little bit faster. So in here, we can select any kind of materials like the Skellige terrain material. And if you wonder where this asset actually resides, because now we can only see the search results and we don't know where are these assets located, we can use the go to resource home option. So if you right click on it and you choose go to resource home, you can actually see where is it actually residing. So it's inside levels and Skellige. Also, you can copy the path to the clipboard. So it will copy the relative path to your clipboard and you can check it that way. So this material should suffice for us for now. Make sure that it's selected. So by left click, you can select different items. And make sure that you have the terrain edit tool still open in the background. And if you see there's this left pointing arrow button that will actually copy the currently selected asset's reference to this field. But of course, I think most of the times you can just copy it if that's more convenient for you. But now just let's choose this arrow and you will see that the reference just copied in there. And the panel for us with all the materials that you can choose within this file is populated. And right now you can actually see in the main viewport that the terrain is actually now visible, but it's looking a little weird because it's above of our camera. So let's move the camera to the terrain level. For that, you can, of course, manually navigate inside of the world. If you want to navigate inside of the world, you can use the WASD keys and the right mouse button to rotate the camera. And using the keys, you can move around the camera. Also, you can move vertically using the E and Q buttons. But also you can move the camera a little bit faster with the LMB and RMB, so left mouse button and right mouse button. If you press both of the buttons, so left and right mouse button at the same time, you can actually move the camera vertically. But when it comes to moving the camera to the terrain level, we can use another neat tool at our proposal, and it's called Move to Terrain Level, which will make sure the camera will be moved right above the terrain, so you don't have to manually do it. And like that, you can actually see the terrain at its full beauty. Okay, so let's get back to the terrain edit tools, and let's just quickly gloss over what you can do with it. One of the tabs called Shape Brush is actually holding a set of brushes with different modes that you can use to actually shape the terrain. So, for example, if you want to rise the terrain to like quickly draw some mountains or anything like that, you can actually do it. In here, once you select some of these brushes, you will see that at your cursor's location, there will be this weird circle drawn around your cursor. You can actually set the size of it by using the scroll wheel of your mouse. Also, you can actually choose to just use the scale on the tool, and that will do the same. The intensity is basically saying how much or how hard should the brush effect apply to the terrain or the selected terrain area. So you want to just make smooth adjustments, you can lower the intensity down. But if you want to have quick results, you can move the intensity up and it will, be a little bit overboard. You can also use the Ctrl-Z keys to undo your changes if you did something accidentally that you did not want. So let's put down the intensity a bit and see that right now it's much, much slower. Let's put it up a little. And now it's something that we want to get. Let's navigate a little bit farther so we can see it clear what happens. And you can just draw anything that you want. Flatten is basically the opposite of that. So you can actually make like holes and like, let's say, lake beds and anything like that. So shape the terrain downwards. You will see that there's this blue line that's connected to another sphere that's colored red. That will try to show you how down will it go when you want to like draw it with maximum. And you can actually set the height of this a little bit upwards. So let's say that you only want to have a little difference with the levels. You can do that. But let's say that when you set the height much lower and set the intensity up, then you will see that you can actually draw bigger holes and like deeper holes. So the height is just basically making sure how deep you can go. Let's Ctrl-Z this. And let's, draw some riverbed for us. We can later use to actually, create these water areas that we previously talked about. Okay, so yes, of course, if the height is actually higher than the terrain level, then it's basically gonna act the same as the rise tool. So let's make sure that it will just, be located just below to the actual cursor level. So let's draw something like that. Perfect. Also, you can draw some slopes that can also help you create some nice mountain areas. For example, smoothing will actually help you melt the edges. So if you have some really rough edges in your terrain, this can actually help to smooth things down. Melt is working a little bit similarly, but it's a little bit, smoother. And also the stamp tool is probably one of the most important things that you can use, because you can actually apply different shapes and different different leveled shapes to your terrains. Most of the time people use this tool to actually draw in mountains, but for that you need to actually apply some stamp data that you can actually select here. Let's just hop over here, and also you can manually set the offset of the stamp. So this way you can, customize the very shape of the area that will affect by this stamp tool. And holes will just basically puncture your terrain right through. It's not going to modify its shape, it's just going to create holes on it. Some of the times it's actually useful if you want to, create some basement level or a building that has some attic to it. That goes down below the ground, then most likely you will use this tool. Okay, materials. You can also paint materials, different materials to your terrain. Right now, you can only see that we have only one, this default material, but also you can select different materials using the left and right mouse button. You can actually smooth some of these properties, like blend the sharpness, slow base them, and so on. So you can actually, high tune these options. And what I wanted to show you is to actually paint with it, you have to first select the material and then check the paint button. So right now we will have a similar sphere around your cursor, and right now you can actually draw upon the terrain itself. All right, and there are like tons of materials, different materials you can choose in here. So if you want to, draw a street, then you can do it with this big layered cliff. And this would be more suffice if you want to draw a street. Yeah. Okay. Like so. And of course, there are some other options like drawing some colors. So if you want to set up a very specific scene where you want to draw everything in red or yellow or whatever, then you can do this with these tools. They supposed to work the same as you would, use the materials. Just make sure that you select something and then click on paint to actually get in paint mode. And also, if you want to modify all of the tiles all at once, you can do this on the left bottom side of the tool, and you can actually select all of the tiles or some of them by using these buttons. Okay, so I think that's perfect to actually get you in a sense how it should be working. And for starters, I think that's pretty enough. But let's move on for now to actually apply some vegetation to our world. So for that, I'm just going to click on the vegetation edit tools this time. And you will see that this is the dialog that will come up. And in here, we have already something in the panel, but by default, most likely you won't have anything in here. So I'm just going to press this X button, right? Yeah, that's pretty much the default view of this dialog. So in here, first of all, we have this brushes list, which will be empty. So we need to find something, some brush material somewhere inside of the asset browser itself. So brush is, yeah, well, I'm not entirely sure where they can be found. So this time I'm just going to use the search bar once again. So let's go with vegetation or maybe trees. I'm just going to search for tree. So we have a bunch of entities, but what I want is a vegetation brush like so. Perfect. So we can use the apple trees one maybe. Yeah, that sounds nice. So what we want to do is to either use this icon to actually apply a brush, or you can just drag and drop it in, and you will see that right now we will have this item in the brushes list. And another thing that you will see once you select this brush item in the list, then this other panel right at the bottom will be populated with all sort of instances that this brush material contains. And you can actually see this neat little preview of all of the different items that you can use. Also, you can select some of the like more specific properties and like high tune them. Of course, when you want to use something and edit its properties or options, you have to check it out first. And that's what it's asking right now, is that right now I want to edit some properties of this ample tree brush. So whether I want to check it out or not, let's say yes. And right now you can see that I can actually put in different values in here. So sparsity and these values can actually help you to, make the actual painted vegetation more scarce or more divided. What I mean is, let's select something and just paint with it. So once you selected something and clicked on paint vegetation, we can actually see a very similar sphere that we can use, which is the brush radius. And in here, you will see that trees will appear once I, pushing the left mouse button. But once I want to create some more sparsity into it, and let's make it 3 and enlarge the radius, you will see that right now this is the current location and division of these trees. But if I use different values this time, maybe 8 and 5, then you will see that they will be much, much rarer. They're not even showing up. So let's go with 1 per city, and the generated scaling factor is 8. So right now you can see that they will be much larger. So you can, fine tune these options to random generate the sizes of these trees, and also how occasionally should they appear in the selected area by your brush, which is pretty nice. Okay, and you can just click on all of these instances and paint them. Right now they are really, really, really occasional. But right now, if I select something more at the sparsity and paint them, then you can see that it's a little bit more nature-like. Okay, and that's pretty much for vegetation. You can also take a look at the paint grass mask to actually paint your grass, and you can just refresh the generate grass, and also you can have the paint size. You can check how large the paint size is. I think it's just a different view of the actual brush radius. I very rarely use this. I just, most of the time I'm just using the radius for it. Okay, and I think we can hop over to actually apply some weather and environment for the world, because right now it's quite dark. What you can use to actually change the time of day and the weather is a tool called World Environment Editor. You can actually open it with this sunglass icon, And also, I think it should appear in Tools, Word Environment Editor. So both of these will open the same tool. And in here, you will see that there's this scale or drag and drop where. So this scale is actually responsible for changing the time of day. You will see that by default, it will be noon. But if I change it to 22, then it will be nighttime, which is pretty neat. And of course, first of all, you have to enable the fake day cycle. So if I have this switched off, then nothing will work. Well, it won't, change the time of day, whether I, change the value of this or not. So make sure that you enable this first. Okay, so by default, we don't have anything in the Word preset and we don't have any active environments. So let's add some. At the World tab, you can see that we have the current properties of the world that we have in here in the main viewport. And for environment parameters, you can see that there's a property called environment properties under the C world. And you can toggle them by, selecting this plus icon next to their names. So untoggling them, you can see that there's a weather template and an environment definition property. Both of these can, they work the same way as, the material instances for the terrain or the actual vegetation brushes. So you have to apply some reference or select them in the asset browser. And once you have them selected, you can actually use this very similar left pointing button. It's also have some tooltips for us calling out that it's the scene's environment definition. So you might have guessed it that we need to search something that's already instantiated somewhere inside the default. So for environments, we can just, search for env and maybe, that's it. Here are all the already existing environment definitions that we can use. And maybe I would like to have something more specific. Since we, use the Skellige terrain, maybe we should stick with the Skellige environment called Skellige. So right now I already have it selected. So I will just use this left arrow button. And by clicking on it, the reference will be there. And probably you have noticed that the environment and the general lighting options is much better now. We can see a little bit better. And I checked the wrong property, but maybe that's not that much of a problem. We just have to apply it for the environment definition as well. That's what I wanted to add. Like so. And for the weather, we will also search something like weather. Okay, there's a bunch of options here. Maybe a little bit more specific. Skellige weather, maybe? If you're finding this view a little bit more difficult, you can also change it to list view on the right top, on the top right corner. So right now we have this grid view, but if the list view is more, suffice for you, then you can use it as well. Okay, so these weathers are actually 2D arrays or like CSV files. So you can actually open them up either inside of the editor or clicking on select, right click and show in Explorer. You can actually, open this CSV file in Excel, for example, and you can edit them and take a look at them. So I don't see, it's actually here. So weather Skellige is actually the weather what I wanted to use. So having it selected and pushing this left arrow button, I can actually see the reference now. Applied. Let's click on save to actually save the world because there's quite a few stuff right now. So having an environment and weather, we can reopen the environment editor. And in here, we can actually choose a couple of weathers since we have weather applied now. So let's see, if we want to have a rainstorm, then it will be applied right away. Or if you want to have something more specific like a blizzard to make some snowfall effects, or just want to have a clear day, then there you have it. Most of these weathers will also have some predefined definitions, like how dark should be the clouds, or how much clouds you want to apply to the actual environment. You can actually see that. And also these clouds will, recolored and look a little bit differently based on the time of the day. And in the definitions tab, you can actually check and edit all the fine-tuning properties of the currently applied environment, which is right now Skellige. But right now we will just, I think we can leave everything by default. But if you're really curious, you can actually check more of these options and like high tune them. Okay, so that's that for environment and weather. And I think we can hop over to actually create some water areas. And maybe it's high time to actually speak a little bit more about this scene structure. So the scene structure is located on the right side in this scene tab. And you will see that this is pretty much a tree view with all the various level assets and also layers. Right now, we don't have anything applied. We haven't created a layer yet, but these folders most of the time should be represented by layer groups. So layer groups are actually these folders that will hold, a number of layers based on some different categories or any kind of logic that makes sense to you or the creator of the world. To actually add a layer in, you can actually right-click inside of the world. And in here, you will have an option called Add Layer. And to create a layer, first you need to open up and add a name. And for the name, we can apply pretty much anything as long as it's, lowercase and it doesn't have any white spaces in it. So first, let's just go with water maybe. And for water, you can actually select the type and build tag for each layer. So for types, you can choose autostatic and non-static. So you will have a little help in this square braces stating that autostatic is for static meshes. So let's say that you want to have a layer with a village where all the buildings should be located. Then that layer most likely will be an autostatic because those buildings will not move around. They pretty much be very static instances of your world. But let's say that you want to have a layer for a quest where spawn points and trigger areas should be visible, and also some NPCs will move around and some of the content of that layer will be there. Then you should use dynamic entities where, different stuff can happen and they are a little bit more dynamic. Also, the build tags are pretty much just for the cause of helping some background functions for the engine. So most of the times they're just tagging these layers to actually, grouping them a little bit easily. So let's say that a function or a script wants to collect each and every layer that is marked with the quest build tag, then this build tag can be used by just filtering them out. So this is just the sake of convenience most of the times. So for the water, I think it's going to be pretty much static. It will always, be located where I put it, and that's that. And I think it should be an outdoor build tag because it's somewhere in the wild, out in an outdoor area. So let's create it. So accidentally, I created the layer inside of the streaming group, but that's okay because essentially these layer groups is one thing that I wanted to talk about. So layer groups can show and hide all of the layers that resides in them. So this applies for the game world as well. So if you want to unload everything or load in everything, you can do that by right-clicking on the group, right now, the root node. And in here, just click on load in or group and everything will be shown. And also you can just, choose the unload group and everything will be hidden. By default, the workflow should be that you only work with one layer at once. And the layer that you're working with should be activated, meaning that you have to double click on it. And once you have it activated, it will be highlighted with the bold letters. So right now we have the water layer that we have created as active, but let's say that we wanted to create another layer. Anything should be auto static outdoor, sure. You will see that by default it will be activated. And right now water is not highlighted. But if I want to, activate it again, I just need to double click on it and that's that. And, once I select a layer, you can see its properties being auto static, outdoor, than anything in the properties panel since we put it down under this scene structure. So for water areas, you can first of all need to activate a layer, because by default, if you don't have a layer activated, then most of the options will not be visible for you on the main viewport. Because most of the time, if you want to create some new stuff like water areas or knob meshes or triggers or waypoints or anything really, you have to right click on the main viewport and edit that way. And also, so if I highlight it, I don't know why is it not seen right now. But if I go back, maybe because I put it in the streaming layer group, so maybe I should just use the anything because it's one level up. Because streaming is a specific layer group, and most of the time we don't need to touch that. So let's go with anything then. Go back, and right now it's working. Okay, so having this layer activated, I can right click on the main viewport and see that now there are different options available for us. So in graphics, you will see that there's an option called Add Local Water Area. And right now we can actually see that there's not much going on. Only the gizmo of it is visible. And the layer now consists one entity called the local water shape. And if I select it, the gizmo will be shown and also all of its properties in the properties menu. So as you could see, the water shapes are actually areas that can be edited, but we cannot see any area. The reason for that it's probably, I forgot to check in the areas debug filter. If you remember, right at the beginning, we checked these options, but due to some mishaps, I have to, recheck it first, but, practice makes perfect. But right now, just making sure that I check these options, save and close. And right now, since I selected the areas debug filter, I can see the area finally. So by pressing the space bar, I can actually select from 3 different gizmo modes. One of them is the move. So this will shown as 3 arrows on the different axes that you can use. So you can drag it by the axis or use these different square options. So you can move it on one axis. These options can be selected on the left side as well. So move, rotate, so you can rotate the area or scale it. Right now, I just want to scale it, so make it a little bit bigger. For that, I'm just gonna scale it like so. And maybe make it a little bit higher up. And then move it a little downwards, like so. Okay. And maybe enlarge it even more. Width. Okay, I think that's perfectly fine for now. So to actually see the water area, or sorry, the water that the water area consists, we need to check a few other things as well. So if you check the world properties, you will see that inside of the environment parameters menu, you will have an option called disable water shaders. So by default, the world will not show the water shaders for optimization reasons. So make sure to uncheck this option. And by unchecking it, you will realize that it's not enough, because there's one more option that we need to check. And it's inside the world environment editor. So inside in here, if you click on the left on the settings tab, you will see that there's an allow water shader option. So if you're having that checked, then you can actually, see the water already. So make sure that you check this option. Okay, so both of these options are selected, but because of the overall minimum elevation, so it's the terrain itself is a little bit more above to the level of our water levels, to the minimum elevation. We have to flatten the layer below to that level so we can actually see the water, because right now we are above water level. So having chosen the height that I want, maybe a little bit less intensity, I can flatten down the terrain. And right now, once the terrain goes under the water level, we will actually see the water that's basically shaped by the local water area. Maybe this will be enough. And there you have it. We have the local water area right now. And if I move around the actual area, then the water will move alongside with it. Maybe scale it a little bit better so it won't be cut down. And yeah, that's that. Okay, so the last thing that we wanted to show you is to actually apply non-meshes to the world. For the sake of simplicity, we should create another layer, and I will only show you how to, create different non-mesh instances and based on the actual terrain itself. So non-meshes can be set to actually just be painted on static meshes or just terrain. So you can actually, separate them if you want to. So for the non-mesh instances, we will create another layer called navigation, maybe. This should be static as well. And this time I will choose navigation. So for non-meshes, you can actually add one by navigation and choosing navigation non-mesh instance. So if you choose that, you will have a very similar area to the local water area one. If the color is a little bit confusing, you can actually change its color. So it will look a little bit more different than the local water area one. We can also scale it a little, like so, make it a little bit higher. And since we want to generate the non-mesh for the terrain, we should make sure that the borders of the area should clip through the terrain itself. Because essentially, if you have the area above the terrain, then the generation will not recognize anything around the generation route, and it will, deem the generation unsuccessful because it couldn't find anything that, can be generated the non-mesh onto. So make sure that you have your area clipped a little bit under the terrain. Let's save it. And another thing that we want to look out for is to actually check a property called non-mesh params. So if you have the area or non-mesh instance selected, you will also see that there's a property called non-mesh component and non-mesh params. And in here, you will have a property called use terrain in generation. So having checked that, we'll make sure that the non-mesh generation will look for terrain as well. It will allow the numbers generation to actually navigate the data onto the terrain as well, because by default it will avoid it. So let's save it again. And right now, if we are happy with the overall shape, we can actually check it out. And by right click on it, you can either do this on the main viewport, but sometimes there are just too many options and it's a little bit convoluted. So more clearer way is to actually just right click on the selected non-mesh instance on the scene structure. And in here, you will see that there's a generate non-mesh option. So click on that. After a few seconds, based on how large the area is, right now it's pretty small one, so it was instantious. And you can see that in here, you can have a dialogue saying that the generation was successful, and also how many triangles and vertices were created along the process. And also it states that you should use the publish generate navigation data so you can actually confirm and finalize the process. Because right now, if I click on OK, we will see the non-mesh on the terrain if I toggle the debug filter for it, of course. So in here, make sure that you have the non-mesh is selected. It's supposed to be somewhere in here. It's here. Okay, sorry. So non-mesh, right? So right now you can see the instance and the drawn shape that the generation had. But this is not finalized. This will only be working on the editor view. To actually finalize it for the finished product of your mod, you should be careful and use the publish generate navigation data option as well. So by clicking on that, it will cook some navigation data for a few seconds. And after that, it's for me, it only took like 30 seconds. But if you have like non-mesh generation all across the level, then maybe it will take a few minutes. So you can be patient. You need to be a little bit more patient with it. But right now we can say that, yeah, the data status was a success, so everything went well. All right, and most of the times the textures and the navigation data should be reloaded. So having the world saved and closed and reopened again will show everything as it were. And also, maybe most of the times you need to only load all the layers, because what it actually did is to actually just, unloaded all the layers so it can work a little bit more efficient. But let's close the world and open it up once again. If you don't see it in the file menu, because these are the worlds that were used most commonly by me, you can just go over the asset browser, and in here in levels, you see all the levels that was created some of the time, all the vanilla worlds like Novigrad and Skellige, and also the world that we just created. And in here, by double-clicking Word tutorial, it will reopen everything. So one small note before I wrap this tutorial up. If you are more curious about all of the use cases and some more specific methods to generate navigation data or non-mesh, you can check out our documentation called Generation Navigation Data on our public Atlassian page, where we state all of the default information, basically all of the information that you need to do and you need to have to, generate the navigation for yourself. So make sure that you check it out. All right, so I think that's all I wanted to talk about today. If you have any questions, please do ask them on the provided forums, and also check out the documentation that I just shown. And without any further ado, have a nice day to you guys, and see ya.